those that are asking the question is the economy booming or busting, don't seem to understand one fundamental thing, and that's that boomers are no longer the primary consumers in the economy. The primary consumers are now millennials and Gen Xers. Good morning, guys. It is Saturday, February 4th, 2023. This is Bathrobe Business. I am George Yoganov. A bit of an unusual episode today because I don't normally post on Saturdays. This is the first time we've done this. This is a young channel, as you know. This is only about a month old, but the reason I had to go with a Saturday post, if you follow my channel, you've seen I didn't do any real posts this week. I think I had one post on Monday or Tuesday. It was fairly quick and concise. I had a family member with some health issues, and because of that and work, I just wasn't able to make any posts. But now we're going to do a little bit of a jumbo episode this Saturday. I'm going to be talking about a lot of different news stories as we usually do, but then I'm going to get to a bigger subject that I kind of want your guys' opinion on. I don't think my take is controversial, but I think it's very debatable. I want to hear what you guys have to say at the end of this video when I give you my little rant on is the economy doing well or is the economy doing poorly? Because it's Saturday, we've replaced our cup of coffee with a nice cup of espresso. I'm going to take a sip real quick. Very nice. We're fancy on the weekends because we have time to pamper. So let's get to the stories. The first story we're going to cover real quick is the federal interest rate. Fed raised interest rates by 0.25%. If you follow me, you know I'm going to be a little shocked by this. I would have thought that Jerome Powell would have raised it a full 0.5%. I'm wondering if he's regretting it given the job numbers we got earlier this week, right? He has said that one of his primary goals is to slow the economy and increase unemployment. Unemployment is down, and we will talk about how down here in the next couple of stories, but I think that's interesting. We'll see what happens in the next couple of months. He was originally saying that he's going to be, reducing it by 0.25% and possibly pausing later this year. Given the numbers we've got with the jobs report, I doubt if that's going to happen. The next story I want to talk about is Apple. Superficially, this story isn't very interesting. Apple is in decline. Sales are down year over year. Specifically in iPhone sales, not surprising. That's their primary product that is the greatest revenue. So what's interesting about this? Reason for the decline. Apple was blaming supply chain issues. They're saying that they cannot meet demand and that if their supply chain was on track, they would have record profits. Perhaps not record, but they would have an amazing quarter. I can believe this for two reasons. The first is going to be entirely anecdotal. So I got a new iPhone this year, actually in the fourth quarter. I got it in late October, early November. I went in because my old phone had broke. I'm not a huge Apple guy. I use Apple products. I could take it or leave it, but I kind of usually stay with what I've been using. And so I went in my old iPhone. I think I had an iPhone 10. And so it had broken. It was beyond repair. I needed a new phone. I walked in, told them I'll get the Pro Max. I figured I'll go with the latest and greatest. They said it was at least 2 to 4 weeks back order, and I would have to wait. Seeing as how my business runs off of my cell phone, I talk to staff, I talk to customers, I get emails. I could not wait 2 weeks, so I went with the iPhone 14. It's a good phone. It's a great phone. I like it. There's nothing wrong with it, but that is loss of revenue for Apple. That's money they would have had out the door had I had the phone in hand. This is also echoed by other companies. So Ford also had their quarterly report this year. Decent quarter this week, decent quarter. But again, sales were stifled by supply chain issues. They cannot manufacture as quickly as they want to. I'm going to post a link in the description below for my brother's YouTube channel. My brother has a YouTube channel on cars, Shwazy_. He does great car analysis, great car reviews. He had a fantastic episode yesterday about the car market, the used car market specifically, but also the new car market. I think it's a great video for those that watch my channel because it really goes into the numbers. He did a fantastic job. I really loved that episode. But we were having dinner last night. So we were having dinner with a friend. We start talking cars because my brother's a car guy, our friend's a car guy. And we start talking about Ford and the Bronco. So my brother is the first person, as far as we know, in Utah to have a Bronco because literally before they rolled off the assembly line, when Ford first announced they were getting Ford Broncos back into assembly, my brother walked into a Ford dealership, put down $100 and said, put me on the wait list. And he was the first to get it rolling off here, the assembly line in Utah. He is talking about how even to this day, 2 years later, possibly 2.5 at this point, they are still having struggle meeting demand. If you want a Ford Bronco, you have to pay. Just to get on the wait list, right? And then you still have to wait anywhere from a year to a year and a half to 2 years for the higher end models. And people like those higher end models. They want those crazy off-roading packages, which is going to be something we're going to discuss later in this video of why people want those bigger off-roading packages. But people are going for those big expenditures. And it's happening across multiple lines for Ford. So it's with the Bronco, it's with the F-150, it's with the F-150 Lightning, it's with the Mach-E, it's with their standard Mustangs. They are not able to keep up with demand. So I think that's a greater trend with the market. Apple is seeing it, Ford is seeing it, a lot of different manufacturers are seeing it. The economy is still remaining strong. This is further reflected in the job numbers that we're going to discuss. But real quick, I'll give you some negative. Google is down. Google had a terrible quarter, just $1.05 per share versus an expected $1.18. Total revenue was $76.05 billion versus $76.53 billion expected. So almost $500 million off from where they should be. I'm only mentioning it just to reinforce that we've talked about this before. Tech is down, right? Google, now Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, that entire sector has been down. Now Netflix did have a very good quarter this last couple of weeks. But they did have to have layoffs earlier in the year, so I will still include them in that. The tech sector is doing badly. Those that are looking for a job in the tech field, I do have someone very close to me that is right now, is just sending off resumes into the ether. It is very hard to find a tech job. That I think also plays into the greater economy trend right now. But let's talk about jobs. So jobs, hiring for the month of January, the U.S. added 517,000 new jobs versus an estimated 187. So almost 3 times as much. This is very similar to the numbers we saw in December. In December, we had 250,000 new jobs were created. It was actually revised later to 223,000, but still a very strong jobs number. And similar to December, the leader was hospitality and leisure. So in the month of January, hospitality and leisure added 128,000 new jobs. And in the month of December, remember, it was 125,000. Government was following suit at 74,000 and healthcare at 58,000. This is the lowest unemployment level since May of 1969. So when the moon landing was occurring, that's when we had job numbers this good. That's pretty astounding. It's pretty staggering. This is clearly going to affect Jerome Powell's decisions in the months to come, but the economy is doing well. And you know I'm going to talk about gold because I've been talking about gold now for weeks. Let's pull up the current spot price. The market is currently closed, but the current closing price was at $1865, so substantially down. As you guys know, I'm not a gold guy. I don't buy gold. I don't sell gold. I don't trade anything in gold. I just always look at gold as a market indicator because it has been in the past. Gold is down to 1865, where it was at 1950 just a couple days ago. So I think a lot of these strong job numbers are bringing the price of gold down. Gold is often a good indicator of if something is looming in the economy. I've been saying for weeks now, if gold hits 2,000, that means something bad is going to come in February. I think that's pretty unlikely now. I think we did avert a disaster. Gold has, again, done this before. When gold spikes, like it did before the 2008 housing crisis, we had the 2008 housing crisis. Gold continued to rise all the way for the next 6 months until the recession was officially over and jobs resumed, hiring resumed, and we started getting incremental growth. And that incremental growth meant incremental decline in the price of gold. If you go back and look at those charts, you'll see that reflected there. And the same thing happened during COVID, during lockdown, price of gold skyrockets. As the economy starts to improve, as things reopen, as things normalize, the price of gold started to decline. That's why I was very surprised a few months ago when gold started climbing exponentially again. And 2,000 seems to be the magic number. Once it hits 2,000, something's coming. So the fact that it declined means something. So that's, I think, very good news. So now let's talk about the economy. This is what I really wanted to do this video on. So, is the economy doing well or is the economy doing poorly? Those that are asking the question is the economy booming or busting, don't seem to understand one fundamental thing, and that's that boomers are no longer the primary consumers in the economy. The primary consumers are now millennials and Gen Xers. I'm not going to talk too much about Zoomers. I'm not going to talk about Gen Z simply because they're still a very young generation. The oldest Gen Zers are about 1996, 1997. The youngest are 2012. So a lot of the averages of this comes out to high school and college, definitely not in their prime purchasing consumer years. So we're going to leave those to the side. But I want to talk about market trends based off of population trends, based off of how boomers, Xers, and millennials buy and sell things. So boomers were the largest generation, right? Originally, there were approximately 78 million boomers born. A lot of these numbers vary, right? It just depends on where you draw the beginning and the end of a generation. But we'll go off of the statistics here that I found that are supposed to be from the Census Bureau. So 78 million boomers were originally born. There are currently approximately 70 million boomers still alive today. However, earliest boomers born in 1946, latest born in 1964. All of those are senior years now. So a lot of these boomers are already in retirement. Even your later boomers are now entering retirement ages. So they're not going to be the primary consumers, right? When people retire, they're not going to be the ones spending the most amount of money. Retirees just don't spend money like they used to. They live off of savings, and their expenditures are lower because they don't travel as much. They don't have children. Grandchildren come to visit them. So they're not going to be driving market forces anymore. So what's going to be driving market forces? Gen X and millennial. So what does that mean? Well, Gen X is a small generation, 65.8 million currently alive today. Millennials, 72.19 million. In both those scenarios, they are smaller than the boomer generation at its peak, right? At its peak of 78 million, both the Gen X and millennial generation is lower. And millennials even larger than Xers. So I think in the coming years, millennials are going to be more dominant in the economy than they even are now, because just by sheer number, I myself a millennial, we outnumber the Xers. But because you're seeing these lower population numbers and boomers exiting the market and exiting jobs, and you don't have the population to sustain their replacement, you're going to see higher wages and higher jobs and higher inflation. We've talked about this in previous videos. I just never really fleshed it out as we have here, but just the numbers are there. As 70 million people leave the market, leave the workforce, you're going to be seeing a lot higher wages and a lot more jobs just because there's not the numbers to replace them. Now, you'll also be seeing a lot more automation, right? Because what are employers and what is the market to do? I don't think it's a coincidence that we're talking more and more about AI and ChatGPT and all sorts of new programs that are going to be coming to the market and changing the economy. So, what can we expect in the coming years? We can expect higher inflation. We can expect high unemployment numbers, high wage growth, but also more automation to offset it. I don't think the automation is going to keep up as quickly as inflation. I think we're going to be in an inflationary period for a long time, but I think automation is definitely going to help cool it, right? Now more and more McDonald's are getting kiosks because they can't find tellers to work at the front counter. So they're going to have kiosks. Grocery stores have kiosks. There's going to be more technology that takes the place of routine things like secretaries and basic bookkeeping. All this is going to be more and more automated because the population isn't there. So that's why when we look at the economy and we say the economy is doing terrible, look at how high inflation is. Well, that's because boomers are leaving. It's because there's less people in the Xer and millennial generation to replace them. So that's on par with the market trend. I think the market's doing fine. The economy's doing well. It's just this is the new norm. This is how it's going to be from now on. This isn't a recession coming. This is a good market. It's just not the market we have seen for almost 54 years because the last time we saw it was when boomers were just starting to enter the economy. Okay, so this is a fundamental shift in how the economy has functioned for almost 50 years. This is the new norm, and this was technically the old norm. We just had 50 years of boomers disrupting it. So let's continue on this trend. So what does that mean for purchasing? Well, here's the interesting thing. Xers are generally very conservative in their spending because Xers suffered the most from financial crises. I know people will say millennials did as well, but that's not necessarily true. Millennials often grew up in households where they were present during recessions. And what I mean by that is millennials were born anywhere from 1981 to 1996. So that is the time of the 80s recession, the dot-com bust, and the 2008 housing crisis. They were in those households, but they didn't suffer directly from them. Xers who were born from 65 to 80 experienced all of those full force. They experienced the recessions of the 80s, the dot-com bust, and then the 2008 financial crisis. So because of that, their expenditures have always been more conservative and always been a little bit more muted. They're not big on debt. They're big on saving. But they are now empty nesters. Most of their kids have left the household, especially since there's always a dichotomy between the generations that spawned the next, right? And what I mean by that is millennials were born of the boomers. Xers were born of the silent. And the Gen Zers are born of the Xers, right? So it alternates. So millennials are famous for being coddled by the boomer generation, right? They are the ones that stay in the household longer. The helicopter parent are the boomers. The recipients are the millennials. Xers are different. Xers were born of the silent generation. And because of that, their habits are a little bit differently. They push their kids out of the home earlier than boomers and millennials did. So because of that, they're very independent. They're raising Gen Z to be very independent as well, following that trend. And because of that, a lot of them are empty nesters. So what that means is even though they are a conservative bunch that don't like to spend money a lot, they have a lot of disposable income. And that's going to be reflected in their purchasing habits. So what do people get when they have empty nests and they have all this free money that they've saved up? Well, they're going to be going for items they've always wanted to buy but didn't. Now, an Xer doesn't necessarily need a new home, right? A generation Xer already has a home. They raise their kids in it. The kids have left. There's no purpose for upgrading. There's no growth in their household. So they're going to hold on to their homes. Versus millennials who are getting to the generation that are starting families or about to, they're not able to get in because Xers are holding on to their homes, right? If the market isn't moving, there can be no room for up or down motion, right? An economy is based on money in flux, money being exchanged in hands. And if there's a certain level of the economy where people aren't selling and just holding, the market can't flow and there can't be any room for competition. So because Xers are holding on to their homes and millennials desperately want them, economic trends are going to continue that housing is going to keep being a growth market. That's reflected in the data because even though interest rates are high, mortgages are back up. Mortgage sales have been going up for a couple weeks now. If you look at the data, despite the high interest rates, new home purchases are up. And in May, the government, the department that handles housing, it's not HUD, it's actually something else. I cannot recall the name. But they are going to be changing some regulations that are going to be reducing a lot of the fees on FHA loans and current conventional home purchases, which is also going to take mortgage rates lower. Remember, mortgage rates, while they are dominated by the federal rate, they're also in response to the bond market, so they're a little more complex. So mortgage rates are actually down a little bit relative to the federal funds rate. And so home purchases are continuing, just at higher and higher prices now. That's the millennials wanting homes, Gen Xers not letting go of their homes. So if you're an Xer and you have a home, you don't need a bigger one. You probably have a car. Yeah, you can go for the upgrade every now and then because, stuff breaks down, new models come out, you might want it. but you're more than likely going to be purchasing some of those more luxury niche products. So, for example, another anecdote, but I think a pretty powerful one. I have friends that are Xers, and what are they buying? One of them just bought a Rolex. Another one bought a couple of new motorcycles. One of them bought an entire cigar collection. So they bought this giant, very impressive humidor. If you actually look, that's my little humidor. I do smoke cigars every now and then. They bought a full commercial unit and stocked it to the brim with $3,000 in cigars. Another one of them has just bought a couple dirt bikes and is going to be buying a dune buggy. They're going skiing. They're going snowboarding. They're going snowmobiling. They're going and buying four-wheelers. And if you look at sales in these areas, they are all up. So a lot of your niche products, a lot of your luxury markets, a lot of these, I don't want to say risky expenditures, but more recreational expenditures are up, including hospitality and leisure. They're traveling more because they have the money to do it. So let's continue the trend. What are millennials doing? Well, millennials love to travel because millennials love experiences. Millennials are more likely to be motivated by experiences rather than material possessions. Now, we can be just as materialistic as any generation. However, if you were to ask a boomer which would they prefer, a vacation or a new car, most boomers would take a nice car. If you ask a millennial, millennials will take the vacation. We like experiences. Eating out. One of my favorite things to do, and this is all my friends, is looking up new fancy restaurants that have opened in the city. We love going to restaurants. We love experiences. We love cocktails. We love the social dynamic. We're a very social generation, in very stark difference to Gen Zers. Again, I'm not going to talk about Gen Zers, but Gen Zers are the digital generation, right? Entirely digital. Millennials grew up with computers, with phones, with digital workspace, but they remember what it was like before that. And they were motivated by boomers telling them to go out into the world and experience that they can do anything. So we're a very social generation. So because of that, also, we're going to be fueling recreation. We're going to be fueling hospitality and leisure because we like those kinds of things. That is what gets us going. We are also starting families much later in life. We're getting married much later in life. So we're much more risky with our spending and with our jobs. So even though millennials can go through good markets and bad markets of hiring, it's much easier to get a single job and worry about one individual than a family where you often have to worry about two jobs and children to support. So for example, I don't have children. I don't have a family yet. I have a girlfriend, but if I lose my job, I still have savings and sooner or later I'll find something. Similarly with my girlfriend, she quit her job, and this is actually how we met, and she decided to travel America and explore because she knew she wouldn't have the experience later in life when she got married. That's something that she's been willing to do because she's looking to start a family later in life. And that's what we're doing. It's much easier to manage an individual than it is to manage a household. And so because of that, millennials are also fueling the hospitality market, the leisure market, the experience market. We like our dune buggies, our four-wheelers, all fine and well, just like Xers. But we're more about going out and exploring and the social dynamics. So that's essentially what I wanted to cover with this video. Is explain the market a little bit and not frame it in a good or bad market, but simply a shifting market. For 50 years, boomers dominated the economy, and that's no longer going to be continuing. It's going to be changing. So look at market trends. Another thing I'll touch on really quick that I just remembered before I wrap up this video is purchasing habits in regards to online versus non-online purchases. So traditionally, people went to a store, purchased a product, and that was it. Everything is moving more towards online sales, specifically with younger Xers and with the millennial generation, right? Millennials are often ordering online, even traditional household items, right? I don't know how often I've ordered toothpaste or something on Amazon, deodorant, cologne, simply because it's easier than running to the store. And that also leads to a more diversity of products. So that's what I mean by that is this. How many razor companies are there now? How many eyeglass companies are there now? How many mattress companies are there now? Has this ever existed in history? Back in the day, there was Gillette for razors. There was Gillette for shaving cream. and you went out and you bought a Serta mattress. Now there are dozens of products, because when you're selling online, you now have direct access to consumers that would not have seen your brand otherwise. It's creating a diversification of products. Also, millennials are the ESG generation, whether you like it or not. I'm not a huge ESG guy myself, but it is there. And if we can be compelled by a story, we're going to go with it. If there's an eyeglass company that makes their frames from recycled material, all of a sudden that's very tempting, rather than going with that than with LensCrafters. Never mind that LensCrafters probably owns it through several subsidiary companies. It's the story that has motivated you to buy. And so because of that, you're going to see a continued trend of people moving away from large corporations to smaller corporations. Now, again, it doesn't mean that those large corporations don't own those smaller corporations, but it does mean there's going to be more diversity in products. If something is going to be woman-owned or diversity-owned or LGBTQ-owned businesses, that's going to fuel the market more than a company that's been established and is considered old guard. So once again, I know I'm kind of taking tangents, but I think this is a very large abstract concept to try to distill down to a single sentence. My point is this. The economy is doing very well. The economy is going to continue to do well. But unlike before, we're going to see continued housing increases and issues with finding affordable housing. We're going to see continued inflation. We're going to see a greater increase in hospitality and leisure and travel. And we're going to see a greater move from larger corporations to smaller corporations. And even in tech, which is often considered a young industry, you've got legacy companies that are losing jobs and newer companies being brought up and hiring extensively. That's going to continue. You're going to see more fragmentation of the market, more inflation, more housing issues. Now, I will finish the video just with one other thing, another prediction I have. Housing is actually going to be the first to reverse. And that is simply because I think it's still 10 years out, but unfortunately there will be more boomers passing away and more boomers downsizing, going from large homes to smaller condos and apartments. There will be boomers that lose a spouse, move in with their children, etc. So I think housing is going to be the first to turn, more so than the labor market or anything else. But I still think that's 10 years out. For the next 10 years, we're still going to have a very difficult housing market. But I think in the subsequent 10 years, we're going to enter massive surpluses, especially in larger cities. So as those populations are falling more in larger cities, we're going to see more availability of housing. Never mind, we don't know what interest rates are going to be. We don't know what the greater market's going to be. But I think just that surplus alone is going to fuel it. So that's been my video. That's our video for today, the video for the week, essentially. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I got a little bit more in depth, took a bit of a rant, more than a few tangents, but I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I completely off the wall, incorrect about every prediction and assessment I've made? Let me know. I hope to see you guys again Wednesday morning. Like, subscribe. I don't usually say that because I try not to be too commercially with this. I'm not doing this for commercial viability. I'm kind of doing this because I'm trying to build a business community in Utah, even though I know a lot of my subjects often focus on national news. I try to bring Utah into the mix as much as possible. So I've got some new content coming in the next subsequent months that's going to focus more and more on Utah business. And so I hope you guys join me in enriching Utah's business community. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you set amazing goals. I hope you meet those goals, and I'll see you guys Monday morning. Bye.